Welcome to Evolved Radio, where we explore the evolution of business and technology. On the podcast today, we have a returning guest, Alex Sterk, who returns to give us an update on what's happening in the blockchain industry. It's been a busy year for the maturity of that entire industry, with lots of news and changes surrounding both Bitcoin and Ethereum and a bunch of other segments of the blockchain industry. So we talk about the growth of the altcoins and some of the forking of the Bitcoin and Ethereum networks. And also Alex gives us an update on a project he's working on called Ubiq, which runs on the Ethereum platform. Alex is pretty focused on the technical end of this space and uses a few terms that people may not be familiar with. I asked a couple of questions along the way to help clarify some things. One that I didn't clarify towards the end of the podcast is what he refers to as SegWit, which is the segregated witness. SegWit is a technology to help Bitcoin scale without increasing the blockchain size. Now let's take it over to Alex. Today's podcast, I'm joined by Alex Sterk, who is the co-founder of Ubiq and the host of Block Talk. Thanks for coming on, Alex.
Hey, thanks for having me on again. It was a pleasure.
So it's been a while since we've talked, and before we started recording, you were saying that it's been 6-7 months or so, and that's basically 6 years in the equivalent of the blockchain space. So if you want to give us maybe a quick update on what you see is happening in the market, both Ethereum and a little bit on Bitcoin, and how things are shaping up in the whole blockchain space.
Yeah. So right now, everyone's kind of talking about this decision time for Bitcoin. So there's really just like some new options on the market for it, like different clients. The main one being from Core, which is kind of like really where a lot of the good devs are. They have a very big and well-established team, lots of expertise. And then there is Bitcoin Unlimited, which has, I guess, they have some developers. They've put together a client, and they have a lot of, interesting ideas for where they think Bitcoin should go. But it definitely doesn't fit within, I think, the consensus. But they have a lot of money, which is kind of an interesting, I guess, attack vector here of having a lot of Bitcoin and then being able to control Bitcoin, and then also doing things like marketing. They definitely have a large marketing budget. Like they're in control of Bitcoin.com. So it's really just kind of like two sides. And it's not that they don't disagree with what Bitcoin looks like in 10 or 15 years. It's just they disagree on the order of steps that it takes to get there. So all this talk of hard forks is kind of why we're seeing a little bit of a pullback of the market, but it's kind of just seasonally, I think, ready for Bitcoin.
Yeah, and there was a big run-up recently, too. My sort of thought on this was that there was a lot of influence from international markets. The crisis in Venezuela and also India changed how they allow banknotes to be released, and a lot of people in some outside countries around the world really flocked to Bitcoin, and there was probably some speculation happening as well. But that was a pretty good run-up over the last maybe 3 months or so.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of factors. I'd say India is probably one of the best ones to mention, because they kind of basically they outlawed certain denominations of bills, and they were not prepared for it. They kind of just made a rash decision, and they had no infrastructure for people to continue commerce. So we got a lineup at banks and stuff. So yeah, they had a very large premium there. I think it was almost up to $200 or so. But then we just have instability in the political world. We have the big guy in the White House now, and the old adage I hear for gold is gold was backed by the broken promises of politicians. Well, when you have a master salesman like Trump in the office, I think there's a lot of broken promises that are kind of coming to light right now, whether it's purely him or just kind of instability around the world.
Yeah, and the Ethereum as well. I felt like there was a ton of hype and a lot of hope. The DAO kind of derailed some of that hype, and it's been a little quieter on the Ethereum front. There's still lots of activity, lots of projects that are starting, but we don't tend to hear as much sort of fanfare from Ethereum. Can you maybe chat a bit about the Ethereum space as well?
Yeah, I'm not sure where you're listening because I always hear about Ethereum. Like Ethereum today is worth what Bitcoin was worth in 2015, I think, and even more now. I'd have to check the current price, but yeah, like we kind of saw the DAO, which was like their attempt at starting this, crazy idea of a company with no goals or anything for the company, and just to kind of prove a concept. They didn't cap it, so it ended up having about $150 million in Ether in it, and someone found an exploit, and they were able to start draining the fund, and they basically had like about a month to kind of figure out what they were going to do before the hacker could actually like send the funds away from a contract to something like an exchange. So they were working on a bunch of different ways to kind of stop it, like soft forks and whatnot. And they eventually decided the only option was a hard fork to basically undo the contract and allow everyone to get fully refunded. But it was rather contentious, like it was seen almost like a bailout. And as a result, we saw Ethereum split into two networks. The original one being Ethereum Classic, that still has the DAO hacker event taking place. So it's kind of like a split universe of some sort. And yeah, we've kind of settled down a little bit. Like Ethereum Classic is still a fairly sizable coin. Like, and like, I'm not saying it's not useful. They now have like two different development teams that have taken upon themselves to continue development, while the official Ethereum team is still supporting the new chain that forked off. And yeah, that's kind of where it's at right now. And I guess now they're this year they've kind of tried to start saving face a bit, because that whole endeavor is looking almost kind of like Silk Road was for Bitcoin. It's just kind of like a little bit of a scar on the Ethereum brand. So now we're seeing a big marketing push to kind of get enterprises excited again with the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance, which I think is basically like very similar to R3. It's just a lot of guys are kind of buying into it to learn more about how they can build out. And yeah, that's essentially where they stand right now. Like that's, I think, where a lot of the run up in price is coming from.
So there's a common theme here between both Ethereum and Bitcoin, that there's the hard forks happening, and you mentioned there's a bit more of a resurgence of the altcoins now. Do you see that as instability in the market, or that the market is competing with itself in some way, or do you see this as a more natural evolution of how things should go and why?
Well, I'll say overall, cryptocurrency as a whole, like taking into account to a lot of the major projects, is not shrinking. When I checked it a couple of weeks ago, it was I think 200 when you compare it against the S&P 500. So worth about as much as Kellogg's. So your morning breakfast is worth more than, I guess, a decentralized governance platform with finance. But yeah, I think overall the market is definitely hot. It's kind of that time of year, people get their tax returns and they want to invest. So money's not leaving the space right now, and people want to hedge against Bitcoin, and they see that Ethereum is doing lots of cool new projects. And I hear about a really big crowd fund that's coming up next month that I think is going to be primarily funded in Ether. So I think that's part of the run up too.
And last time we spoke, we talked a bit about Storage.io, and that they were a storage platform built on Bitcoin. They've recently announced that they're moving to Ethereum. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, like I think a lot of people who wanted to build a blockchain token, a token that exists on a blockchain, they thought Counterparty was kind of a really easy option. You're leveraging the security of Bitcoin, and you're able to not really worry about double spends or anything. But then as transactions became more expensive, your colored coins have the same issues that regular Bitcoin has, and have the same fees. And like the exchange operators I talked to were actually eating a lot of the extra fees because it was more expensive to send a counterparty token. So Storage was working on some solutions to actually create payment channels of some sort, like allow for microtransactions in Bitcoin with their colored storage coins. But I think overall they just saw the support and the capability and I don't know, just a general sense of community that is around Ethereum, and decided that they were going to port over.
Cool. So you've got a interesting project that you've co-founded, Ubic. Do you want to tell us what Ubic is and what your vision is for the platform?
Yeah, like we've kind of been a community that started way back when, Bitcoin kind of started as an email list that Satoshi kind of dispersed out with. Ubic started as a chat room called Coin Markets. It was really like the place everyone hung out back in 2014, 2013 to discuss not only Bitcoin, but like what other cool and innovative products were out there, like trying to understand this market as a whole. So the original creator of our original chain was Julian, and he basically launched one of the fairest coins, I think, out there. He kind of gave people 2 weeks heads up, like, we're going to launch on this date. The first couple blocks that were mined actually had little to no reward, so people could kind of get their miners up and make sure the difficulty was proper. The network was already like operating at capacity before it was even paying out. And then we mined proof of work for 5 days, and then it switched to proof of stake. And after that, the community still like kind of was there. Like we eventually got listed on a market a couple months later, and kind of the mindset of it wasn't just another thing to be traded. Like this is kind of a community coin, really organic, and we kind of brought that ahead. And really the only thing we were able to build with this kind of like Bitcoin code base with a couple new novel features was a tip bot. Everything else we tried to build was rather difficult. So we made the decision after a couple of conference calls I organized in the spring to look at other currencies and see what we could upgrade the network to. And we kind of settled on Ethereum code base being one of the more interesting ones in terms of functionality. So we started a test net in the summer, and by January, we were confident that we were able to switch the network over. So we did a snapshot of everyone's balances and transferred to the new network. And so now we are the only altcoin that has switched from a Bitcoin code base to an Ethereum code base, and we're back to proof of work. So yeah, a nice kind of like we got the economics of like Bitcoin combined with the functionality of Ethereum.
Can you explain that a bit more in detail? Like what actually comes over from Bitcoin, or are you just suggesting that the platform has tested capabilities on both sides of that fence?
Well, we're the only, I guess, Ethereum code base in the top 100 currencies that has a monetary policy. Like a lot of them, and without a pre-mine as well. So like we have fairly created all of our coins, our development team, no one has had an unfair advantage. The development team is actually just a company we formed this year to kind of officially say we're supporting the chain and building products for it. And the general idea of it is it's a fair launch, no ICO, and no pre-mine.
Okay, cool. And the ICO, what does ICO mean for the layman?
Initial coin offering. So it's kind of a play on IPO. Like,
right. Okay.
So people who want to do a crowdfund, they ask for money and they can give a coin in return. So, like Ethereum, for example, was an ICO around the same time we launched the original network. And then when they launched their network, it was almost 2 years ago now. They also included a pre-mine in the launch. So they have a lot of coins that weren't created with proof of work, and now they have a very high interest rate. And honestly, if you look at it more like a tech company, like in terms of their general goal, decentralize all the things, they have so many different projects and whatnot they want to seed and be able to kind of fund and really just kind of have this like like a high burn rate of trying to like build all these really cool things. we're taking the slower, more stable approach. Like we only have about a 7% inflation rate right now in our first year, and that's going to decrease down to less than 1% over 8 years. So that's why I say we're kind of similar to Bitcoin, where we have a similar inflation rate to them right now. So you can look at Ubic much more as a currency, and like Ethereum is maybe a little bit closer to what you consider a stock.
Right. Okay. For people that are not deeply into the blockchain space, maybe they have a couple of Bitcoins, or they've sort of spent some time listening to some information, reading up on this. Where would you suggest is the best place for people to start? Like, should they look at some of the altcoins as a sort of an easier place to get into this, like Ubic, or should they be looking just keep it simple, stick with Bitcoin? What would be your suggestion for people just looking to get a little deeper into this area?
Well, I guess it depends what you're after. Like if you're, a speculative investor, you don't really even need to know the story of some of these. You can play the chart. I know guys who are very successful at just kind of buying charts, very technical analysis, looking at candles all day. But if you're interested more in like fundamental analysis, you have to start like going to these chat rooms and really understanding and reading forums. Like you can read a Bitcoin talk post on an altcoin and really get a good idea of what is the core, like what are the specs of the network, like what's the block time, like what's the reward, do they have an inflation plan, are they planning a pre-mine? And you can even look for unmoderated threads, and people will report back like, hey, this guy actually has a hidden pre-mine, or like Bitcoin Talk is a wealth of knowledge. And I'm trying to find someone who can build me a wiki, so we can do like a Wikipedia page of all these projects and people and how they link together. So that's something I hope to kind of have as an extra tool for Block Talk. Just kind of, I guess, have more of a resource or a database. But if you're looking for a community that really cares about the actual code-based development, like we don't really talk about price too much, you can join the Ubic Slack, and you can ask about any coin. You'll probably get a decent history on it and some pretty unbiased answers.
Awesome. So you mentioned the Ubic Slack, and obviously you're the host of Block Talk, where you can get tons and tons of great info direct from the development communities on these projects. Any other places that you'd like to send people? And feel free to throw out some URLs for Block Talk and for Ubic as well.
So the Ubic Slack, I believe is... so you go to slack.ubicsmart.com, and if you just go to ubicsmart.com, you can find any relevant info on it. YouTube.com/blocktalk is my YouTube channel. So I try and have on cool projects at least once a week. And if you have any like projects you want to find out more about, maybe I get the developer on, you can send them my way, shoot me a message. I'm on Twitter at block_talk. There's a lot of resources. I think it just comes down to like reputable and trust. Like I really like the World Crypto Network guys. I mean, there's a lot of maximalists there, but they still appreciate what the altcoins are doing. Like they understand innovation needs to come from somewhere, even if eventually all this stuff could potentially be on Bitcoin. It's just going to take a hell of a lot longer.
Awesome. I guess finally in closing, what do you see? What do you predict happening over, say, the next 6 months? If we chat again in 6 months, what do you think is probably going to transpire in the blockchain space?
Well, I think Bitcoin's kind of hit a floor here, so we're gonna, maybe consolidate in price, maybe even dip a little lower. We really need to see like a bump in SegWit support. Like I think SegWit is going to win overall, or it is going to be the actual event that kind of takes Bitcoin to the next price range. And that's going to unlock a crap load of functionality, like because we can build a second layer and it makes payments on the Bitcoin network cheap again. Because if you've been in the space long enough, you remember when a transaction cost less than a penny, now it's up to like 30 cents. So for, remittance, it kind of makes sense. For tipping someone, not so much. Like we stopped buying beer we have a Bitcoin beer machine at our hackerspace in Vancouver, Decontrol, and we had to turn off the Bitcoin functionality because it just wasn't viable anymore for such a small purchase.
All right. Well, I appreciate you spending some time. I know you've had a busy week hitting the conferences, so appreciate making the time to come on. And we'll definitely reach out to you again in 6 months and see how things are changing in the space. So thanks for your time, Alex, and have a good one.
Yeah, I appreciate having me on again. I look forward to doing it again soon.